Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before starting the video, please subscribe and keep watching for more details videos. Coco Gauff told she already looks concerned and sad after her first round US Open win. I felt for her. Coco Gauff will play her US Open second round match later today, with Donna Vekic a stern test for so early in the competition. However, her first round opponent was hardly much easier, forced to scrape through a 3-hour-long battle with Ajla Tomiljanovic. It has been a really tough start for the top-ranked American, who has arrived in New York with the world upon her shoulders. And now, two pundits have suggested it might all be proving too much for her. Coco Gauff's demeanor questioned after US Open first-round match. Context is key with these comments, made by David Law and Catherine Whitaker on the Tennis Podcast. After all, they reference Gauff's decision to change her coaching team on the eve of the US Open often, parting ways with Matt Daly in favor of Gavin McMillan, the biomechanics coach famed for fixing Aryna Sabalenka's serve. Law began by reviewing her first-round win. That is probably just not the tennis she wants to be playing, but it is a way to get herself into rallies without clocking up double faults. I mean, as you said, 10 in the match, but over 3 hours, she's been putting not far off 10 in sets at times, sometimes more than that on really bad days. And her baseline game is still absolutely world-class. Yes, there's a forehand issue at times, but yeah, she was sustaining forehand exchanges against a player really going after her forehand and trying to break it down. And for the most part, it was standing up. So I guess the view is, well, make sure you get into rallies, because you're still a brilliant baseliner. But to have to go 3 hours with not one of the very best players and only just squeak it out, and having made such a fundamental overhaul of her backroom staff in the week before the US Open because of a specific issue, and, like, the most important shot in the game in many ways. She wasn't trying to hide the stress she was feeling in that interview on court. I felt for her. This has clearly been a lot. She's exhausted already mentally. Whitaker then added, the immediate aftermath of the match was fascinating, I thought, because she celebrated like she'd won the US Open. That was the Coco Gauff we know. And it was a very dramatic match point, wasn't it? And obviously it felt right on a knife edge, right up until the very last moment. She'd already tried and failed to serve out the match, went back to 5-5. She broke again and had a second bite of the cherry, which she did eventually take. But it really was in the balance right up until the very end, and she roared. You know. Huge, huge moment when she leaped into the air. It was a huge moment. And then so quickly, she looked sad. Like, in that on-court interview. Good questions, you know. The crowd were with her. The crowd were into it. She looked concerned and sad, very, very quickly. And you saw some backstage images of her getting onto the exercise bike in the gym, where she seemed to continue to look pretty sad. Law then finished by praising Gauff's openness, but also outlining how he feels when listening to her downbeat interviews. Yeah, she's made it very clear in all the interviews we've done with her over the years in press conferences. We've seen her after a lot of sad defeats, and she doesn't hide how much it means to her. I just think her performances and her success and her career, you know, she put such a lot into it. And she's at kind of one of the biggest tournaments in the world for her, maybe the biggest, and certainly the one that she won 2 years ago. And everybody's looking at her, and she's come out here, and she's tinkering in this manner with her game. And she obviously just hates that feeling. That's what it feels like when you listen to her. Coco Gauff knows she has taken a big risk at this year's US Open. Whilst the errors were once again prevalent, this is not a phenomenon that is new, or will have surprised Gauff. In fact, in making the decision to revamp her entire coaching staff ahead of the US Open and bring in McMillan to transform her serve, she would have known what was to come. It's a hugely risky and experimental decision, and throws her ability to compete for the title completely in doubt. Clearly, this was a decision the 21-year-old was comfortable with. However, as she said when justifying it, she does not like to lose at any event, whether it be a 250 or a Grand Slam. So, to be performing below expectations and misfiring from a forehand and serve again is bound to draw frustration. There is so much pressure on this young girl's shoulders, and she has made such a bold move right on the eve of the US Open. Gauff knows the risks involved and therefore cannot be too frustrated if it results in a shock early exit. It was supposed to be a moment of celebration. The crowd in Arthur Ashe Stadium roared as Coco Gauff sealed her first-round win at the U.S. Open. A win is a win, especially in the unforgiving, pressure-filled crucible of New York tennis. Yet as she walked to the net, victorious, all eyes weren't on her forehand or her footwork. They were on her face. And her face told a different story. A commentator's voice cut through the applause. "She already looks concerned and sad." The remark echoed louder than expected. Not because it was cruel. There was no malice in the tone. But because it felt true. At just 21, Coco Gauff looked like someone carrying more than a tennis bag on her shoulders. From the beginning, Coco Gauff's story has read like a fairy tale. One that the world has written for her, whether she asked for it or not. Bursting onto the scene at 15 with that stunning win over Venus Williams at Wimbledon, Gauff was quickly branded as the future. A future that would come fast, bright, and perhaps a bit too heavy. But there's something the world forgets about fairy tales. They demand a hero, and heroes rarely get to show weakness. It's easy to forget that behind the headlines and the hashtags, #NextSerena, #CocoRising, is a young woman navigating a life under a microscope. Each win is met with applause, each loss with concern, and each facial expression with scrutiny. Her victory should have been enough. But the question wasn't how did she win? It became, why didn't she smile more when she did? "I felt for her," the commentator continued, this time with unmistakable empathy. Maybe it wasn't sadness or concern on her face. Maybe it was the look of someone who has learned that every win is just a prelude to 100 new expectations. Tennis is a sport of solitude. Unlike team sports, where blame can be spread and praise shared, tennis leaves you alone on a vast court with nothing but your thoughts and the eyes of thousands watching. In the modern era, that loneliness extends off the court. Every match is followed by press conferences, social media analysis, and online chatter. For Gauff, that analysis isn't limited to her game. It extends to her maturity, her composure, her demeanor. Coco Gauff doesn't just represent herself when she walks onto the court. She represents a generation of young, Black athletes trying to navigate the space between being seen and being free. Free to feel, free to win ugly, free to lose without being considered a failure. And yes, free to look concerned without being labeled sad. There's a difference between pressure and promise. Promise is what you're told you have. Pressure is what people put on you to fulfill it, and fast. In the locker room after her first-round win, Coco sat quietly, scrolling through her phone. The headlines were already up. Coco advances, but is she mentally tired? Gauff wins, but eyes tell another story. Concerned Coco. Fans notice her mood post-victory. She sighed, not because they were wrong, but because they were right in ways they didn't fully understand. She was tired, not physically, though her legs ached and her shoulder begged for ice. She was emotionally tired, of trying to live up to being a symbol of greatness, when all she really wanted, some days, was to just be a kid who loved tennis. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Her coach peeked in. "You okay?" Coco nodded. "Yeah, just thinking." "About the match?" "No, about how a win never feels like just a win anymore." He sat next to her, pausing before he said, "You're not just playing tennis out there. You know that. You're carrying all the stuff people project onto you. That's heavy, but you don't have to carry all of it." She looked at him. "Then why does it feel like I do?" He had no answer, because he knew she was right. Outside the stadium, a young girl clutched a Coco Gauff autograph and beamed with pride. She had seen the match, had seen the look, but she didn't care. To her, Coco wasn't sad, she was strong. And strong sometimes looks tired. Strong sometimes looks worried. But strong always shows up. She turned to her mother and said, "I want to be like her." Coco Gauff didn't grow up in a vacuum. She is a product of her environment, of parents who nurtured her talent, and a system that quickly monetized it. Nike ads, magazine covers, brand deals. Every step she took toward greatness came with a camera flash. And with every camera came a spotlight. And with every spotlight, a shadow. The world loves a young champion. But the world is also impatient. We demand excellence, then punish imperfection. We ask for authenticity, then criticize emotion. We tell athletes to focus on the game, but also expect them to be public figures, role models, and spokespeople. Is it any wonder Gauff looked concerned? Maybe she's beginning to learn what every prodigy eventually learns, that talent opens doors, but expectations build walls. The second round came. Then the third. Each win brought louder cheers and sharper questions. How are you managing the pressure? You looked emotional out there. Care to comment? Do you feel the weight of America's hope on your shoulders? She answered each one with grace, poise, and just enough guarded honesty to keep herself intact. But in the quiet moments, when the microphones were off and the lights dimmed, she allowed herself to feel the very thing the public didn't want her to doubt. Not doubt in her ability, but in her freedom. On day 7 of the tournament, as she walked onto the court for her 4th-round match, she took a moment to pause at the entrance. The crowd, already buzzing, leaned in. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just breathed. And that breath, though quiet, was a small act of rebellion. A moment for herself, not for the cameras. A reminder that she is a person, not a performance. After another hard-fought victory, a reporter asked, "Do you feel like you're finally proving yourself?" She tilted her head, thinking, "I think I've always been enough," she said. Maybe now I'm just letting myself believe that too. So maybe that commentator was right. Maybe Coco Gauff did look concerned. Maybe she even looked sad. But what he didn't see was what that expression truly meant. Not defeat, not fear, but depth. The depth of a young woman grappling with greatness. The depth of someone who has already lived 1,000 headlines and still finds the strength to write her own. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we let Coco Gauff be more than the story we tell about her. Let her win without dissecting her joy. Let her look concerned without questioning her spirit. Let her be whole, not just strong, not just smiling, not just inspiring, but fully human. Because sometimes being human on the biggest stage is the bravest act of all.